Ryan Condal, you're the showrunner for House of the Dragon, which is set hundreds of years before the events of Game of Thrones. Well, first off, was it daunting to enter this world that already has so much established lore attached to it between the books and the series?
It was very daunting, but I mean, I don't think the established lore is really the reason. I think that's actually a gift is coming into this incredibly well realized world. I think the daunting part is trying to follow the most successful television series of all time and daring to uh, think you have something to say in that universe and finding the right path to it and not just continuing the story because everybody wants to revisit Westeros and see more people in blonde wigs and their dragons. You're trying to find the core elements that made the show different, if familiar to the original, but different thematically, different from a character, from a storytelling perspective. The things that are in play in terms of how this world holds up a mirror to our world in reality, and again, there is always going to be similarities, I think, between this show and the original show. It's a struggle for power over a throne and a crown, but finding those things that made this different, I think, and coming in and trying to follow the original were probably the things that kept me awake at night and still do the most.
Now, one thing I imagine might be daunting about the show is, like Game of Thrones, you're dealing with a large cast of characters and interweaving storylines. How is it, how do you go about managing all of those details?
I mean, that's all it is all very challenging. Believe it or not, we have fewer point of views, I think, than the original series did. I mean, I know it can feel like you're getting tossed around a lot. I think that was one of the things that we really locked into early with how we broke House of the Dragon, which was that it's essentially it was going to be about this one family. It's a Greek tragedy about this one family, this Targaryen family, an extended family, because they're multiple different wings and branches of it. But essentially, all of the storytelling kind of centers around those characters, their parents, their offspring, and I think that made it more manageable. But look, it's very difficult. It's a multi POV story. It's based on a history book, so you have a lot of sketches of things, of characters, of ideas, of events, of history, but you don't really have all the details that were present in the original books that the original series was based on. So there is a ton of invention required, and it just it's the writing process tends to take 6 months to a year, and there's just lots of iterations and lots of Google documents and tracking documents and lots of index cards up on the board. And I think we just try to break the individual character stories against the plot points that we know we need to hit, and then figure out how to interweave them. And that's in many ways the most fun and the most challenging part is finding ways to have all of the different stories touch each other, even when the characters aren't present necessarily in the same zip code. Is figuring out how one person's action over here causes an effect that affects King's Landing, and so on. But that's the trick with, I think, any of these multi POV shows. It was definitely the challenge with the original, for sure.
We meet some new dragon riders in season two. What is your process for introducing new characters into this already expansive canvas? Like, how do you know when the time is right and how to interweave?
Well, I mean, we do follow the book. I mean, the book is our first kind of guidepost, and that in itself is a really nice outline and timeline for the big events that were chronicled in history. And we kind of base that's sort of the first pass. Is like, what are the next big events that nobody argues that they all happened. And then we try to figure out who our POVs are into those events, which characters we're going to be following, and who's the eyewitness that's going to take us through this event. And sometimes it's one of our main characters, and sometimes it requires a new POV from the book. And oftentimes it's needing that new point of view, which dictates how a new character is going to get introduced, whether they're a point of view character, meaning whether we're going to take time and story time and spend it with them. But I think it happens pretty organically. I mean, the Dragon Riders were a great challenge and great fun in season two because we introduced them sort of long before they even sniffed their first dragon. And what it was great to be able to do is to introduce these characters that were not from the upper crust, not from the nobility, but were often from the most common folk in this world who don't often get a voice and a say in anything that happens, particularly in the storytelling in the show, just because of the nature. The show is typically about the upper crust of the upper 1%. So it was really fun getting to introduce those characters organically and tell their stories in a way so that we knew who they were and what they were worried about and what they wanted and what they were thinking about and their hopes and desires and dreams and whether they had any relationships, people they cared about in the city where they were living before they went off and tried to claim a dragon. So hopefully by the time you get to that big climactic episode where everybody goes in and tries their luck with the giant fire-breathing nuclear weapons that could just as easily kill them as accept them as their rider. You really care about them, and you're invested in their story, and hopefully you want to see them succeed.
Yeah, you do have, a number of dragons on the series. Do you have a favorite one, like your favorite to write about and write for, and to see, realized on the screen once the visual effects artists have had their way with it?
They're all great fun to work with. It's actually that still is the best of moment, I think, for me, because it takes so long to make them that really I'm only seeing the final iteration of the dragon a few weeks before everybody else does when it airs, because those are the things that you're working on until the very last minute, just because of the way the visual effects pipeline works. So when you see those final polished shots that have all the the smoke and the fire and all the little snarls and the drool and the flies around them, when they really come together and come to life as characters, that's really it's super exciting. And this year it was great fun just working with the dragons that we hadn't seen before. Vermithor, the Bronze Fury. I mean, what a great name. And that's the second biggest dragon in the world, next to Vhagar, who we got to know quite well in season one and season two. So I think bringing Vermithor to life in Lonnie Peristeer's episode in the seventh episode was super exciting, just because we had designed him and worked on him for so long, and then we're literally seeing him come together weeks before we have to let go of the episode because it has to make the air date.
Are there ever moments where you want to accomplish something in a story or in a scene, and for some reason, the visual effects artist can't do a certain thing, or there are other like factors or limitations?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think everybody just assumes that we have unlimited resources on the show, and we do have an embarrassing number of resources, time, money, all sorts of the toys that you get to play with, the incredible crew and artisans that we get to work with that are all at the top of their game. These are all top level British film industry artists. But there are things that are just not practically possible, often, as there are with any television show. And I wouldn't say it's visual effects limitations. I would just say it's more sort of things that you can ask an actor to do, things that you can ask a young actor to do versus things you would expect of an adult actor. And there are limitations that come to that, and things that we haven't been able to do exactly as done in the book. That's the nature of taking something that's in a written medium, that's a prose medium, and moving it over to a film medium where you have to work with directors and actors and production designers and visual effects artists to bring the thing to life. And that's just part of the adaptation process. And I think the fun of that is just taking the limitations and trying to spin them into new things that are that you maybe wouldn't have thought of if you didn't run into that particular roadblock, and trying to make it something new and exciting.
Congratulations on the show. Looking forward to more of it to come. And thank you so much for talking with me about it.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.